The courthouse in downtown Dallas looked exactly the way power liked to present itself: clean stone, polished glass, and complete confidence. By 8:30 that morning, satellite news trucks filled the street, cameras crowded the entrance, and every business reporter in Texas seemed to believe the hearing inside would determine whether Green Route had been built on innovation or deception. I stepped out of the car wearing the same navy suit I had worn during the North Star acquisition. No jewelry except my wedding ring replacement, a simple silver band I had bought for myself after closing the deal, not because I needed another marriage, but because I wanted a reminder that promises made to yourself matter more than promises made by people who never intended to keep them. Dana walked beside me, carrying 3 case binders. Denise followed with North Star's legal team. Marcus climbed out of another vehicle several seconds later. Reporters instantly rushed toward him instead of me. "Mr. Whitaker, did your ex-wife steal your company? Did you secretly fund Green Route? Are you withdrawing the lawsuit?" Marcus stopped walking. For 5 years, he had hidden from uncomfortable questions. This morning, he looked directly into the cameras. "I never filed that lawsuit," he said clearly. "Simone Carter built Green Route herself. Anyone telling you otherwise is lying." The crowd exploded with new questions, but he kept walking without answering another one. I glanced at him only once. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Inside the courthouse, security was tighter than usual. The hearing had been moved into the largest civil courtroom because so many observers requested access. Investors, journalists, attorneys, former employees, and curious strangers filled nearly every seat before the judge even entered. Adrian sat at the plaintiff's table dressed in cream-colored silk, looking more like the chairwoman of a charity gala than the architect of a forged lawsuit. Beside her sat Douglas Mercer, perfectly composed, a thick stack of documents arranged with surgical precision. Brielle was there too, but she looked nothing like the woman from the engagement dinner. She wore no engagement ring, no designer smile, and barely looked up from her folded hands. When she finally met my eyes, she looked away almost immediately. Mercer stood as we approached. "Miss Carter." His voice was smooth. "Quite a turnout." "Truth attracts attention," I replied. He smiled politely. "So do good stories." "The difference," I said, "is that truth survives cross-examination." His smile faded only slightly. "We'll see." Before either of us could continue, the courtroom doors opened again. Every head turned toward the entrance. A gray-haired man walked inside carrying a worn leather briefcase. Mr. Alvarez. Behind him came 2 farmers from the original Green Route pilot program. Then my first software engineer. Then the grocery cooperative director who had signed our first paid contract. None of them had been subpoenaed. They had come because they wanted to. Dana leaned toward me. "Your people showed up." I looked across the room at Adrian. For the first time that morning, uncertainty crossed her face. She had spent years collecting documents. I had spent years building relationships. One of those things was much harder to forge. At precisely 9 o'clock, the bailiff announced the judge. Everyone stood. Judge Harold Whitman entered quietly, reviewed the case file, and took his seat. Before any attorney spoke, Denise rose. "Your Honor, before proceedings begin, North Star respectfully requests disclosure regarding any prior relationship between this court and the Whitaker Family Foundation." The courtroom became perfectly still. Judge Whitman removed his reading glasses. "Counsel is referring to my previous service on the Foundation's Scholarship Advisory Board." Denise nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked directly at her. "I resigned 3 years ago and disclosed that relationship upon assignment." Denise continued calmly. "We appreciate that disclosure. We simply wish to confirm it on the record." Confirmed. Mercer stood immediately afterward. "The plaintiff has no objection to the court's continued participation." Dana rose without hesitation. "Neither does the defense at this time." I understood her strategy instantly. Challenging the judge without evidence would make us appear desperate. Better to let the record reflect transparency and fight the actual case. Judge Whitman nodded once. "Very well. Mr. Mercer, your opening." Mercer walked confidently toward the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, today's hearing concerns a simple question. Did Marcus Whitaker possess an ownership interest in Green Route that was concealed during divorce proceedings and later erased during acquisition negotiations? He held up a thick folder. We intend to show documentary evidence demonstrating that Mr. Whitaker provided initial capital, participated in early operational decisions, and was intentionally excluded from the company's eventual success. Every sentence sounded polished. Reasonable. Dangerous. Mercer wasn't trying to prove theft beyond doubt. He was trying to make doubt sound reasonable. Then Dana stood. Your Honor, the defense will show that every material document presented by the plaintiff either originated after the alleged events or has already been identified as altered through forensic review. More importantly, we will present the testimony of the only person whose name the plaintiff has been using without permission. She turned slightly toward Marcus. Mr. Whitaker himself. Mercer remained confident. Too confident. That bothered me. He knew Marcus planned to testify. He knew the affidavit existed. Yet he still looked like a man holding one final card. The hearing began with financial records, server invoices, early bank statements, vendor payments. Exactly as Dana predicted, Mercer built his timeline around the $200 server payment Marcus once made from our joint account. Would you agree? Mercer asked the first forensic accountant. That this payment directly benefited Greenroot? Yes. And therefore Mr. Whitaker contributed financially to the company? Dana objected immediately. Mischaracterizes ownership. Sustained. But Mercer smiled anyway. He wasn't arguing law yet. He was planting impressions, piece by piece, question by question. By mid-morning, the courtroom had settled into a tense rhythm. Mercer built narratives. Dana dismantled them. Denise quietly passed notes whenever North Star records became relevant. I answered factual questions about Green Route's formation without emotion. Marcus waited silently behind us. Then, just before the lunch recess, Mercer reached into his briefcase and removed a sealed envelope I had never seen before. Even Dana frowned. Mercer approached the bench. Your Honor, the plaintiff recently obtained additional evidence directly relevant to ownership. Dana stood instantly. We object to surprise evidence. Mercer shook his head. This document was received less than 12 hours ago. Judge Whitman examined the envelope briefly before allowing it to be marked for identification. My heartbeat slowed. Surprise was never good. Mercer removed a faded photograph from inside. It was another picture from the county cooperative. Another angle from the same day Claire Donovan had photographed us. Except this one showed something different. In the background, partially obscured by stacked produce crates, Marcus was handing me a folded envelope. Mercer turned toward the courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps this was not merely encouragement after all. The courtroom leaned forward almost as one body. Mercer held the photograph high enough for the gallery to see before handing copies to the judge, Dana, and Denise. I studied it carefully. Marcus was indeed handing me a folded envelope. The image was real. The conclusion Mercer wanted the court to draw was not. Mr. Mercer, Dana said evenly, a photograph without context proves very little. Mercer smiled. That depends on the context. He called his next witness. The plaintiff calls Paige Whitaker. A murmur spread across the courtroom as Paige entered wearing a conservative gray suit, looking far calmer than she had any right to be. She took the oath without hesitation and sat in the witness box. Mercer approached slowly. Miss Whitaker, do you recognize the photograph? Yes. How? My uncle Marcus showed it to our family years ago. Marcus immediately stood. That's a lie. Judge Whitman raised a hand. Mr. Whitaker, you'll have your opportunity, Mercer continued. What did your uncle tell the family? Paige folded her hands neatly. He said the envelope contained money he loaned Simone so she could finish building Greenroot. Several reporters began typing before she even finished speaking. Mercer nodded. Did he ever say he expected repayment? No. He said they were husband and wife and the company belonged to both of them. Dana remained perfectly still, making notes instead of reacting. I recognize the strategy. Never interrupt a witness who is building a lie too large to support itself. Mercer finished his direct examination and sat down with obvious satisfaction. Dana rose slowly. Miss Whitaker, you're an attorney, correct? Yes. You understand the difference between something you personally witnessed and something someone allegedly told you? Of course. Excellent. Were you present when this photograph was taken? No. Were you present when the envelope changed hands? No. Did you ever see money inside that envelope? Paige hesitated. No. Did you ever see a promissory note? No. Any investment agreement? No. Any ownership contract? No. Dana walked closer. So your entire testimony is based on a conversation you claim happened years ago? Yes. Do you have any notes made at that time? No. Any emails? No. Any text messages? No. Paige shifted in her seat. Dana's voice remained calm. Miss Whitaker, when exactly did this remarkable memory suddenly return? Paige glanced toward Mercer before answering. Recently. After North Star announced its acquisition? Yes. After your cousin's family became involved in litigation? Yes. Dana nodded once. One final question. Yesterday morning, were you employed by North Star Dominion as a contract attorney? Paige swallowed. Yes. And yesterday afternoon? No. Because you were terminated for unauthorized access to confidential records? Mercer objected immediately, but the judge overruled him. Paige's face tightened. Yes. Dana returned to counsel table without another question. Paige had not collapsed dramatically. She had done something worse. She had become unreliable. Mercer sensed it too and ended her testimony quickly. After a short recess, Dana called Marcus. He walked to the witness stand more steadily than I expected. When he took the oath, he looked directly at the judge instead of at his mother. Dana began simply. Mr. Whitaker, did you found Greenroot? No. Did you own Greenroot? No. Did you ever believe you owned Greenroot? No. Then tell the court about the envelope. Marcus smiled sadly. I remember that day. He looked toward the photograph. Simone had just finished presenting her prototype to 3 farmers. She thought nobody liked it because they didn't ask many questions. A few people in the courtroom smiled. What was in the envelope? Dana asked. Marcus laughed quietly. Coupons. Mercer frowned. Coupons? Marcus nodded. A grocery store had mailed us baby formula coupons because Lila had just been born. Simone was working through lunch, so I brought them to her. The courtroom fell silent. Marcus continued. We couldn't afford formula some weeks. Those coupons mattered. Dana handed him the enlarged photograph. Can you identify the envelope? Yes. How? Because Simone wrote formula across the front so we wouldn't accidentally throw it away. Dana pointed toward the enlarged image. Would you read what's written there? The courtroom projector zoomed in. Faint blue handwriting appeared across the corner of the envelope. The word was barely visible until magnified. Formula. A quiet wave of surprise moved through the gallery. Mercer immediately stood. The image quality has already been enhanced by the court's own forensic technician. Dana interrupted. The technician confirmed it under oath. Mercer sat down slowly. For the first time that morning, Adrian looked genuinely shaken. Marcus looked toward the gallery instead of toward me. That envelope never contained investment money, he said quietly. It contained discounts so we could feed our daughter. No one spoke for several seconds. Judge Whitman removed his glasses and looked down at the photograph again. The emotional weight of that single handwritten word had done more damage to the fabricated ownership story than 20 legal arguments. Just as Dana prepared to call the next witness, the courtroom doors opened. A deputy hurried to the bench, carrying a sealed message. Judge Whitman read it, then looked toward Denise. Counsel, approach. The attorneys gathered quietly. I could not hear the conversation, but I watched Denise's expression change from curiosity to disbelief. When they returned, the judge addressed the courtroom. The court has just been informed that federal investigators executed a search warrant this morning at the offices of Mercer and Associates. A stunned silence followed. Mercer stood so quickly his chair nearly fell over. Your Honor, I have received no such notice. Judge Whitman looked at him steadily. You have now. Mercer went pale. On what grounds? The judge glanced at the written notice. Possible evidence tampering connected to documents submitted in this proceeding. Reporters rushed for their phones. Cameras outside the courtroom immediately pivoted toward the law firm's developing story. Adrian turned toward Mercer in complete shock. Douglas, she whispered. Mercer didn't answer. He looked at Paige instead. She lowered her eyes. Denise slowly stood. Your Honor, in light of this development, North Star respectfully requests immediate forensic custody of every disputed document submitted by the plaintiff. Granted. Two court officers walked toward Mercer's table. He didn't resist, but the confidence that had carried him through the morning had disappeared completely. As the officers collected the evidence boxes, one of them paused. Judge, he said carefully, there's something else. Proceed. The officer held up a small sealed evidence bag recovered during the search. Inside was an old USB drive with a faded handwritten label. Everyone leaned forward. The officer read it aloud. Original Green Route documents do not copy. My heartbeat slowed. Dana looked at me. Denise looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at his mother. Adrian's face lost every trace of color, because only one person had ever used those exact words. 8 years ago, sitting at a folding table in a county farming cooperative, I had written that label myself before placing the USB into my backpack, and I had never seen it again after visiting Adrian Whitaker's house the following week. The courtroom remained frozen as the evidence officer placed the faded USB drive onto the judge's bench. No one spoke. No one needed to. 8 years had disappeared in a single heartbeat. I knew that label because I had written it myself, with a blue permanent marker after finishing Green Route's first working prototype. Original Green Route documents, do not copy. At the time, I had laughed while writing it because there was nothing inside worth stealing. The drive contained rough code, handwritten business notes, early routing models, and a folder of embarrassing presentation slides I had shown to exactly 3 farmers. It was a reminder of hope more than value. Yet somehow it had vanished after one visit to Adrian Whitaker's house, and now it had surfaced inside the office of the attorney leading the case against me. Judge Whitman looked toward Mercer. Counsel, would you care to explain why material apparently belonging to the defendant was recovered from your office? Mercer stood slowly. The confidence that usually carried him had disappeared completely. Your Honor, I have never seen that device. Denise immediately responded. Then your office has an extraordinary habit of collecting evidence without your knowledge. A few reporters smiled despite themselves. Mercer ignored the remark. Until the forensic examination is complete, nobody can establish where that drive originated. Agreed, the judge replied. Which is precisely why it will remain in federal custody. Court officers sealed the evidence bag and removed it from the courtroom. I watched it disappear through the side door, feeling something strange settle inside me. Relief, perhaps. Not because the USB would magically solve everything, but because after years of defending memories, there was finally a chance for history itself to speak. The hearing recessed for 1 hour while the court reorganized the evidence schedule. The hallway outside immediately exploded into controlled chaos. Cameras lined both sides of the corridor. Producers whispered into headsets. Reporters rehearsed live introductions. Every television in the courthouse lobby showed my face beside Adrian's under giant headlines asking who had really built Green Route. Dana guided me into a small conference room away from the crowd. Denise closed the door behind us. Marcus remained outside with security, answering no questions. Dana dropped 3 legal folders onto the table. The USB changes everything, she said. Denise nodded cautiously. Maybe. I looked between them. That doesn't sound optimistic. Denise folded her hands. Because evidence is only useful if it says what we hope it says. Dana understood immediately. If the files were altered years ago, then the defense becomes more complicated, Denise finished. I leaned back in my chair. Open possibilities. Dana counted them off. Best case? The USB contains original source files proving sole ownership. Middle case, it's corrupted. Worst case, someone replaced the contents years ago. None of us said what we were all thinking. Adrian had possessed nearly a decade to prepare. If she had stolen the drive, she had also possessed nearly a decade to manipulate it. Before we could continue, there was a quiet knock. One of Denise's investigators stepped inside. The forensic lab completed an initial scan. My pulse quickened. Already? Only the metadata. He handed Denise a printed report. She read silently for several seconds before looking up. The files haven't been modified in 8 years. Dana blinked. None of them? No changes, no additions, no deletions. I felt my shoulders loosen for the first time in 2 days. So the contents are original. Denise nodded. Assuming the timestamps are authentic, yes. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Can I come in? I looked at Dana. She gave a slight nod. Marcus stepped inside quietly. His eyes moved from my face to the report in Denise's hand. Good news? Potentially, Denise answered. Marcus let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since yesterday. Thank God. He remained standing instead of sitting. There's something I need to tell all of you. Dana looked up. Now? Especially now. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, searching for words. After the divorce, Mom asked me several times whether I'd ever seen Simone back up her work. I stared at him. You never told me that. I was ashamed. His voice cracked slightly. At first I thought she was just trying to value assets for the settlement. Then she started asking where you kept external drives. Denise wrote something in her notebook. Did you answer? Marcus shook his head immediately. No, I honestly didn't know. Did she mention a USB? Not directly. He closed his eyes for a moment. She only said one sentence I never forgot. He looked at me. She said, one day that little company will either make us rich or make her regret ever building it. Silence settled over the room. Dana slowly closed the folder in front of her. She wasn't planning for divorce. Marcus nodded sadly. She was planning for success. Denise's phone rang before anyone could respond. She listened briefly, then looked toward me. The lab opened the USB. Every muscle in my body tightened. And there are 43 folders. Dana leaned forward. Any source code? Denise nodded. Yes. My breathing slowed. Founder documents? Yes. Investment records? Yes. Marcus whispered. Then it's over. Denise didn't answer. Instead, she looked back at the report in her hand, her expression changing almost imperceptibly. Dana noticed immediately. What is it? Denise hesitated. There's one folder none of us expected. I frowned. Which one? She turned the report around. At the bottom of the directory list, beneath source, code, vendor, contracts, and prototype, models, was a final folder with a creation date matching the day I visited Adrian's house 8 years earlier. Its name consisted of only 2 words. Read first. The words read first sat on the printed directory like a warning from the past. For a moment, nobody in the conference room moved. I had created hundreds of folders during Greenroot's early days, most of them chaotic, rushed, and named with the kind of exhaustion only a broke founder with a newborn could understand. But I did not remember making that one. Dana looked at me. Did you create it? No. Marcus shook his head slowly. I've never seen that. Denise stepped away to take another call from the forensic lab. Her voice was quiet, but every word seemed to tighten the air around us. When she returned, she looked directly at me. It's not a document folder. My stomach dropped. Then what is it? A video file. The room went silent. Denise placed her phone on speaker. A forensic analyst explained that the file had been recorded 8 years earlier using the webcam on my own laptop, saved automatically to the USB, and never opened again. Dana asked whether it had been edited. The answer came back immediately. No evidence of alteration. Denise looked at me. The court has authorized playback under seal first. Only counsel, parties, and the judge. 20 minutes later, we were back in the courtroom, but the gallery had been cleared. No reporters, no spectators. Just the judge, court staff, attorneys, Denise, Marcus, Adrian, Mercer, and me. Adrian sat completely rigid. For the first time since I had known her, she looked less like a woman in control and more like someone trying to remember what secrets she had buried. The screen at the front of the courtroom flickered to life. At first, there was only darkness and the muffled sound of movement. Then the video adjusted. I saw myself 8 years younger, sitting at Adrian's dining table with my laptop open, tired, pregnant, and hopeful. My heart clenched. I remembered that day. Marcus had gone upstairs to look for old tax files. Adrian had asked me to show her the Little Farm program because she wanted to understand what I was spending so much time on. In the video, younger me stepped out of frame, probably to use the restroom. For 3 seconds, the chair sat empty. Then Adrian entered the frame. She looked younger too, but her eyes were the same. Cold, calculating. She leaned over my laptop, inserted the USB drive, and began copying files. Marcus made a broken sound beside me. On the screen, Adrian whispered to someone off camera, "If this ever becomes worth anything, we will need proof she did not build it alone." Douglas Mercer's voice answered from outside the frame. "Then get everything. Original files are always more useful before success makes them suspicious." The courtroom froze. Mercer's face went gray. Adrian closed her eyes. The video continued. Younger me returned to the room, smiling politely, completely unaware my future had just been copied behind my back. The screen went black. Nobody spoke. Judge Whitman leaned back slowly, his expression no longer neutral. Dana stood first. "Your Honor, based on this recording, we move for immediate dismissal of the plaintiff's emergency complaint, sanctions against counsel, referral for criminal investigation, and full restoration of Miss Carter's unrestricted authority under the North Star Acquisition Agreement." Mercer tried to stand. "Your Honor." "Sit down, Mr. Mercer," the judge said. His voice was quiet, but absolute. Mercer sat. Adrian did not move. Marcus stared at his mother as if the last surviving piece of his childhood had just died in front of him. Judge Whitman turned toward Adrian. "Mrs. Whitaker, this court has just watched you remove proprietary business records from a pregnant woman's computer while discussing future ownership manipulation with your attorney." Adrian lifted her chin, but even that looked weak now. "I was protecting my son," Marcus whispered. "No, you weren't." She turned toward him sharply. "Everything I did was for you." He stood then, slowly. "You stole from my wife. You used my name. You terrified my daughter. And you still think this is love." Adrian's lips trembled. "Marcus." "No." His voice broke, but he did not back down. "You do not get to say my name like you are the victim." Judge Whitman granted the dismissal before lunch. He ordered the complaint sealed as fraudulent pending investigation, referred Mercer and Adrian for potential evidence tampering, and required every public filing connected to the false ownership claim to be corrected immediately. Outside, reporters swarmed, but this time I did not hide. I stepped to the microphones with Dana on one side and Marcus on the other. "Green Route was never stolen," I said. "It was built. It was built by work, by sacrifice, by farmers who believed before investors did, and by a mother who refused to let humiliation become her daughter's inheritance." Questions exploded, but I raised one hand. "There will be no further comment today." As we turned to leave, Adrian was escorted through the courthouse doors behind us. Cameras flashed violently. For 1 second, her eyes met mine. There was no apology in them, only hatred. Then she smiled. Not a defeated smile. A warning. My phone vibrated in my hand. An unknown number had sent one message. "You cleared your name. Now try saving your daughters." The message stayed on my phone like a threat with a pulse. "You cleared your name. Now try saving your daughters." For 1 second, the noise outside the courthouse disappeared. The cameras, the reporters, the questions, the flashing lights, all of it fell away until there was only Lila's face in my mind, her missing front teeth, her strawberry-stained fingers, her small voice asking if we were going to lose our house. Dana saw my expression change and immediately stepped closer. Simone? I handed her the phone. Marcus read over her shoulder and every drop of color left his face. No, he whispered. No, no, no. I did not panic. Panic is a luxury when you are a mother. Panic comes later, when the child is asleep and the danger has passed. In that moment, my mind became clean and cold. Call my mother, I said. Dana already had her phone out. On it. Marcus reached for his own phone with shaking hands. Lila is at your house? With my mother and 2 private security officers. Then she's safe. I looked at him. Do not say that unless you know it. He stopped. Dana's call connected. I watched her face while she listened. Mrs. Carter, it's Dana Bell. Is Lila with you? A pause. Dana's eyes sharpened. Put eyes on her now. Another pause. Too long. My heart did not speed up. It dropped. Dana looked at me. Your mother says Lila is in the garden with Officer Reed. I took the phone from her. Mama. My mother's voice trembled. Simone, what's happening? Go to Lila. Right now. Keep the phone on. I heard movement, the back door opening, wind in the speaker. Then my mother called. Lila? No answer. Lila, baby? Marcus gripped the courthouse railing so hard his knuckles whitened. My mother's breathing grew louder. She was just here. I closed my eyes for half a second. Where is Officer Reed? I don't see him. Dana began barking orders to security. Denise Calloway appeared beside us, reading the situation instantly. Threat? I nodded once. My daughter. Her expression changed from legal precision to something harder. Give me the address. I gave it. Denise turned to one of the federal marshals still near the courthouse entrance. Possible child abduction threat. Coordinate with Dallas PD and private security. Now. My mother's voice rose through the phone. Simone, there's a phone on the bench. What phone? Not mine. Not yours. It's just sitting here. Do not touch it, Dana shouted, leaning toward the speaker. Too late, my mother gasped. A distorted voice played through the line, calm and mechanical. If Simone wants her daughter's name kept clean, she will come alone to the place where she first learned what family really costs. The recording ended. I did not need an address. Neither did Marcus. Adrian's Highland Park sunroom. The place where she had demanded green route. The place where Marcus had stayed behind. The place where my old life had ended. My mother began crying. Simone, Lila is gone. The words struck, but they did not break me. Not yet. Listen to me, I said, forcing steel into my voice. You are going to stay where you are. Police are coming. Do not touch anything else. Do you understand? Yes. I will get her back. I ended the call and turned toward the vehicles. Marcus moved with me. I'm coming. No. Simone. I spun on him. Your mother took my child. That is exactly why I'm coming. She wants me alone. She wants you controlled. There is a difference. Denise stepped between us before the argument could explode. Nobody goes alone. That instruction is meant to isolate you. We coordinate. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. No police. No North Star. No Marcus. Come alone, or every network gets the custody file. Attached was a scanned document. My breath caught despite myself. It was a sealed family court evaluation from the year after my divorce, filled with private details about Lila's early medical issues, my temporary housing instability, and carefully framed language that made survival look like neglect. It had been sealed to protect my daughter. Adrian had it. And now she was threatening to turn my child's most vulnerable history into a weapon. Marcus stared at the file, horror building in his eyes. She stole that too. I looked at him. How would she have it? He swallowed. Because my attorney filed parts of it during custody negotiations. Your attorney? Mercer. The name answered everything. Adrian had not kidnapped Lila for ransom. She was doing something worse. She was trying to force me into submission by threatening my daughter's dignity. Denise read the message and shook her head. This is extortion and child endangerment. It is Adrian, Marcus said, voice shaking with rage. She won't hurt Lila physically, she'll scare her, she'll talk, she'll manipulate. I looked at him sharply. That is hurting her. He lowered his eyes. I know. Dana grabbed my arm. Simone, listen. If you walk in alone, you give Adrian the only thing she still wants. Control. And if I don't, she releases the custody file. Dana's grip tightened. Then we deal with the release. My voice turned deadly quiet. You are not a mother. She flinched but did not let go. No. I am your lawyer. And I am telling you that if Adrian has Lila, she will not stop after one demand. Today, it is the custody file. Tomorrow, it is a forced statement. Then a settlement. Then access. Then control of Lila's life. You give her one locked door, she will spend the rest of her life building keys. I hated her for being right. Denise spoke into her phone, then looked at me. We have a tactical unit moving toward Highland Park. No sirens. No visible approach. Your private security officer Reed is alive. He was found unconscious near your garden gate. Relief flashed through me, brief and brutal. Drugged? Likely. Marcus swore under his breath. My mother could not do that herself. No, Denise said. She had help. Another message arrived. This time it was a photo. Lila sitting on the cream-colored sofa in Adrian's sunroom, holding her stuffed rabbit, eyes red from crying but physically unharmed. Adrian's hand rested on her shoulder. My vision narrowed. Below the photo was one sentence. 20 minutes, Simone. Then I teach the world what kind of mother you really were. I looked at the image until my fear became something sharper. Adrian had made the same mistake twice. She believed my love made me weak. It did not. It made me precise. Denise, I said, can you get audio inside that house? Not legally, without emergency authorization. Then get it. Already requesting. Dana looked at me carefully. What are you thinking? I stared at Lila's tearful face on the screen. Adrian wants me to come alone because she needs a performance. She needs me scared, begging, emotional. She needs to record something she can use. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, that's how she works. Then we give her a performance. Dana frowned. Simone, I go to the house. No, I go visibly alone. You and Denise do whatever you need to do invisibly. Denise studied me for a long moment. That is dangerous. So is waiting. Marcus stepped forward. Use me. I looked at him. What? His face was pale but steady. She said no, Marcus, because she knows I can still reach some part of her. Not love, not conscience, ego. If she thinks I rejected you again, she might lower her guard. My stomach turned. You want to pretend to side with her? No, he said quietly. I want to finally use my weakness against her. Dana looked at Denise. Denise looked toward the marshal. No one liked it. That did not make it useless. My phone buzzed once more. This time, it was a live call. Unknown number. I answered, and Adrian's voice filled my ear, smooth as poison. You have always been stubborn, Simone. I said nothing. That stubbornness is why Lila is crying in my sunroom right now. Marcus's face twisted with fury. I held up a hand to keep him silent. Adrian continued. Come alone. Sign a public statement admitting Marcus helped build Greenroot, withdraw from the North Star Restructuring Committee, and agree to private mediation regarding Lila's family access. Do that, and this unpleasantness ends. And if I don't? Adrian laughed softly. Then by dinner, America will know you were once too poor to provide stable housing for your daughter. My voice stayed calm. You mean, America will know I survived what you helped create? A pause. Careful. No, Adrian. You be careful. Her voice hardened. You are not in control here. I looked at Denise, then Dana, then Marcus. You keep telling yourself that. I ended the call before she could answer. In the silence that followed, Denise's phone chimed. She read the message and looked up. Emergency authorization granted. We can monitor the house. Dana exhaled. Marcus closed his eyes. I looked toward the waiting car. Then let's go get my daughter. We reached Highland Park in 13 minutes. I rode in the front passenger seat of an unmarked vehicle, while Denise's team moved 2 streets behind us, and Dana coordinated from a secure call. Marcus sat in a separate car because the plan required Adrian to believe I had obeyed her. My hands were steady when I stepped out at the curb. That scared me more than shaking would have. Adrian's house glowed behind its iron gate, beautiful and cold, exactly as it had been the day I walked out with Lila as a newborn. This time, my daughter was inside without me. My phone vibrated. Denise's message appeared. Audio active. Tactical team in position. Keep her talking. The gate buzzed open before I touched it. I walked up the stone path alone, feeling every old memory try to claw its way back into my body. The sunroom door opened. Adrian stood there in pale silk, smiling like a woman receiving a guest instead of holding a child hostage. Behind her, Lila sat on the cream sofa with her stuffed rabbit crushed against her chest. Her eyes found mine, and for 1 second my heart almost broke through my ribs. "Mommy," she whispered. I forced myself not to run. "Hi, baby. I'm right here." Adrian stepped between us. "Not yet." The words turned my blood to ice. "Move. After you sign." She pointed to the glass table. A printed statement waited beside a pen. "You will admit Marcus materially supported Greenroot from its formation. You will request a temporary pause from North Star Authority. You will also agree that Lila deserves a relationship with her paternal family." I looked at the paper. "You kidnapped a child to negotiate visitation. I protected my granddaughter from a vindictive mother." Lila began crying again. Adrian glanced back sharply. "Stop that. Strong girls do not cry." Something savage moved through me, but I kept my voice calm. "Lila, look at me." Her wet eyes lifted. "You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to be scared. None of this is your fault." Adrian's face tightened. "Do not undermine me in my own home. You lost the right to speak to my child the moment you used her as leverage." Adrian laughed softly. "Leverage is how the world works, Simone. You just hate that I understand it better than you." I walked closer to the table, but not to the pen. "No, Adrian. You understand control. That is not the same thing." Her smile thinned. "Sign. And then you take Lila home." "No. Then you invent the next demand." Her eyes flashed. "You really should have learned humility by now." "I learned it sleeping in rooms you would not step inside." "And yet here you are," she said, voice lowering, "still needing something from me." That was when the front door opened behind me. Marcus stepped into the sunroom. Adrian's entire face changed. "I said no, Marcus." He looked at her calmly. "You also said Simone stole from me. You have said a lot of things that were not true." Adrian stepped toward him, furious. "Get out." "No," Lila whispered. "Daddy?" Marcus's eyes filled with pain, but he kept them on his mother. "Let her go." Adrian's hand moved toward Lila's shoulder. I stepped forward instantly. "Do not touch her." Adrian froze, then smiled. "There she is. The angry, unstable mother I warned the court about." My stomach dropped. Of course. A camera. Somewhere in the room she was recording. I forced my hands open. Forced my breathing slow. "You wanted me to lose control." Adrian tilted her head. "I wanted the truth." Marcus looked around the room, spotted the tiny black lens hidden inside a bookshelf clock, and gave the smallest nod. Denise's team had it now. Adrian saw his eyes move and realized too late. Her smile vanished. Outside, tires rolled quietly over gravel. Then came the sound of car doors. Adrian grabbed the statement from the table and shoved it toward me. "Sign it now, or I release everything." Marcus said softly, "No, Mom, you won't." She turned on him. "You weak, useless boy." He flinched, but did not retreat. "Maybe. But I am still going to be the man I should have been when Lila was 6 weeks old." He walked past Adrian, picked up his daughter, and held her tight. Lila sobbed into his shoulder. I moved to them, wrapping my arms around both of them before Adrian could speak. Then Denise entered with 2 officers behind her. "Adrian Whitaker, step away from the child." Adrian's face transformed from rage to wounded dignity in a single breath. "This is a misunderstanding." Denise held up her phone. No. This is recorded extortion, custodial interference, and child endangerment. Adrian looked at Marcus one last time, expecting him to save her. He only held Lila tighter. For the first time in her life, Adrian Whitaker had no child left willing to be her weapon. As officers moved toward her, she suddenly laughed and looked straight at me. You think this ends with me? My arms tightened around Lila. Adrian smiled with terrifying calm. Ask North Star what happens when a founder's daughter becomes part of a federal custody investigation. Then the officers took her away, and my phone buzzed with an emergency alert from Dana. North Star Board just suspended your committee authority pending family risk review. Adrian Whitaker was finally in custody, but she had still managed to land one last blow before the patrol car door closed. North Star Board just suspended your committee authority pending family risk review. The message remained on my phone as I sat in the back seat beside Lila, holding her hand while she slowly stopped shaking. She had fallen asleep with her head against my shoulder before we even left Highland Park. Children survive terrifying moments differently than adults. They collapse into exhaustion because they trust someone else to stay awake. I brushed a strand of hair away from her face and silently promised that I would. Marcus drove behind us with Dana, while Denise remained at the scene overseeing evidence collection. 20 minutes later, we arrived home, where my mother wrapped Lila in a blanket and carried her upstairs without saying a word. Only after my daughter's bedroom door closed did I finally allow myself to breathe. Dana placed her laptop on the kitchen table. The board suspension is temporary. I looked at her. Temporary things can still destroy companies, only if you let them. Marcus remained standing near the doorway. What does the suspension actually mean? Dana opened the notification. Simone keeps her equity, board seat, and voting rights, but until the review ends, she cannot participate in restructuring decisions. I understood immediately. Calvin Rhodes. They removed me from his case. Dana nodded once. Yes. Denise arrived a few minutes later carrying a sealed evidence box. She looked exhausted but focused. Adrian refused to answer questions without counsel. Mercer has also invoked his rights. Marcus laughed bitterly. Of course they have. Denise placed the evidence box on the table. However, the search warrant recovered every recording device inside the sunroom. Dana looked up. Including tonight's? Including tonight's. Relief spread quietly across the room. Every threat, every demand, every attempt to force me into signing a false statement had been preserved. Denise wasn't finished. There's something else. She removed a thin folder from the box. We found this locked inside Adrian's desk. My name was written across the front in elegant handwriting. Simone Carter. I stared at it without touching it. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. I've never seen that before, he whispered. Denise carefully opened the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings about Green Route dating back 7 years, magazine interviews, conference appearances, investment announcements, acquisition rumors. Every article had handwritten notes in Adrian's precise script. One clipping from 3 years earlier had a sentence circled in red. Green Route expected to expand nationally within 18 months. Beside it, Adrian had written, "Too late to stop growth. Must attack ownership instead." Dana slowly closed her eyes. She documented the entire strategy. Denise nodded. Page after page. Another note beside the North Star acquisition announcement read, "Board position creates leverage. Remove credibility before closing." Marcus sat down heavily, unable to keep standing. She planned every step. Not every step, I said quietly. She planned every failure. The room became still. Dana looked at me. What do you mean? I turned another page. Every note assumed one thing: that I would react emotionally, that I would negotiate, that I would trade truth for peace. Adrian had predicted my fear. She had never predicted my patience. My phone rang. Elliot Vance. "I've been expecting your call," I said. "Then you already know why I'm calling." His tone remained professional but softer than before. The board met again after learning about Adrian's arrest. And they're divided. Dana leaned closer. Elliot continued. Half the directors believe suspending your authority protected North Star, the other half believe it rewarded extortion. Which side are you on? There was no hesitation. The second. I let out a slow breath. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His voice lowered. There's one director refusing to vote until tomorrow morning. Dana frowned. Why wait? Elliot answered before I could ask. Because someone requested permission to address the board in person. I felt a familiar unease settle into my chest. Who? Another brief silence. Brielle Whitaker. Marcus looked up sharply. Brielle, Elliot continued. She claims she has information that changes everything about the Green Route investigation. Dana's fingers stopped moving across her keyboard. Denise's expression hardened. Did she say what? No. Only that if the board hears her before making a final decision, North Star will avoid a very expensive mistake. The call ended, leaving 4 people staring at each other across my kitchen table. Marcus spoke first. She wouldn't. No one answered. He shook his head harder. She knows Mom kidnapped Lila. She knows the ownership case collapsed. Denise remained calm. People under emotional pressure make unpredictable decisions. Marcus stood again. Or she's finally telling the truth. Dana looked at him carefully. Would she? He hesitated. I honestly don't know anymore. My phone vibrated with a calendar notification. North Star Emergency Board Session. 9 a.m. Attendance, optional. Optional. The board was giving me a choice. Walk into another room where my character would be debated by strangers, or stay home with my daughter and let other people decide my future. I looked upstairs toward Lila's bedroom, then back at the notification. I'm going, I said. Dana nodded immediately. Good. Marcus looked uncertain. Should I come? Before I could answer, another message appeared from an unknown sender. It contained only one photograph. Brielle sat alone inside what looked like a church, holding the same cream-colored folder she had carried during the courthouse livestream. Beneath the image was one sentence. She isn't coming to destroy you tomorrow. She's coming to confess. The photograph of Brielle sitting alone in the church did not feel like comfort. It felt like bait shaped like hope. I had learned too much in the last 48 hours to trust any message simply because it promised confession. Dana enlarged the image on her laptop while Denise studied the metadata. Marcus stood behind us, arms folded, face tight with worry. That's St. Catherine's, he said quietly. Brielle used to go there when she was scared. I looked at him. Scared of what? He gave a sad laugh. Mom. Failure. Being ordinary. Anything that made her feel like she wasn't special enough to be loved. I did not answer. Brielle's pain explained some things. It excused none of them. Denise looked up from her phone. Metadata says the photo was taken 40 minutes ago, sent through an anonymized relay. Dana frowned. So someone wants us to believe Brielle is turning, or someone wants us to walk into tomorrow expecting her to. I looked at the picture again. Brielle's hands were wrapped around the cream folder, knuckles pale, shoulders hunched as if the room itself had become too heavy. There was no makeup armor left, no social performance, no diamond ring, just a woman sitting under stained glass with the wreckage of her choices in her lap. I'm still going, I said. Marcus nodded. So am I. I looked at him. No. Tomorrow is not about you saving me. I know. His voice was steady. It's about me not hiding while my family keeps using my silence as a weapon. That was fair, and for once I had no argument. The next morning, North Star Dominion's Dallas boardroom was colder than any courtroom. Courtrooms at least admit they are built for judgment. Boardrooms pretend they are built for reason. 12 directors sat around a long obsidian table with tablets, bottled water, and expressions polished into professional neutrality. Elliot Vance sat at the head. Dana stood beside me. Denise attended as compliance counsel. Marcus waited near the back wall. One empty chair remained at the opposite end of the room. Brielle's. At exactly 9:03, she walked in. No silver dress, no diamonds, no Calvin. She wore a plain black suit and carried the cream folder against her chest. Every director watched her cross the room. She did not look at them. She looked at me. "Simone," she said softly. I did not respond. Elliot cleared his throat. "Miss Whitaker, you requested to address the board before its final review." Brielle nodded. "Yes. You understand this session is recorded and that false statements may expose you to legal consequences." "I understand." Her voice trembled, but she did not sit. She placed the cream folder on the table and opened it. "My mother asked me to come here today and say Simone Carter manipulated my brother, stole marital assets, and used family conflict to gain control over Rhodes' assets through North Star." Dana's posture sharpened. Brielle swallowed. "That is not why I'm here." The room went still. Brielle removed a stack of papers from the folder. "These are copies of instructions my mother gave me over the last year. Emails, texts, notes from calls with Douglas Mercer and Paige Whitaker. They show that the ownership complaint was planned before the North Star acquisition closed." A murmur moved through the directors. Elliot leaned forward. Brielle continued, tears forming but not falling. "My mother told me Simone was dangerous because she had become too powerful. She said if we could make people question how Greenroot began, the board would remove Simone from the Rhodes Restructuring Committee. That would give Calvin time to move trust assets before foreclosure review." Denise stepped forward and accepted the documents. "Why come forward now?" Brielle finally looked at me again. "Because last night I watched my mother use a child the way she used all of us." Her voice cracked. "And I realized if I stayed quiet, I would become her completely." Marcus lowered his head. "I felt nothing simple. Not forgiveness, not triumph. Something heavier." Brielle turned toward the board. "Simone did not steal Greenroute. Marcus did not build it. My mother stole Simone's files years ago, and we helped turn that theft into a weapon." She paused, then added, "I helped." That admission changed the room. Directors who had looked skeptical now looked uncomfortable. Brielle reached into the folder one last time and removed a small recorder. "There is more." Denise's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "A call from this morning." Brielle pressed play. Adrian's voice filled the boardroom, cold and unmistakable. "If they ask whether Simone is fit for authority, say no. Tell them she is unstable. Tell them she uses her daughter for sympathy. Tell them anything. Once she is removed from the committee, Calvin's debt can be restructured privately, and we can still salvage the family position." Brielle's recorded voice answered, "And Lila?" Adrian replied, "Children forget fear. Adults remember power." The audio stopped. No one spoke. Elliot's face had gone rigid with disgust. One director slowly closed his tablet. Another whispered, "My God." I stared at Brielle. Her tears were falling now. "I am sorry," she said. "Not because I got caught. Because I finally saw what I was helping protect." For a long moment I could only think of Lila asleep upstairs, trusting me to keep her world safe. Then Elliot stood. "The board will vote now." It took less than 6 minutes. My committee authority was fully restored. Adrian's communications were referred to federal investigators. North Star publicly affirmed that all Greenroute ownership allegations were fraudulent. And Calvin Rhodes's debt file was returned to my committee for final review. When the meeting ended, Brielle approached me slowly. "I know this does not fix anything." "No," I said. "It doesn't." She nodded through tears. "But I wanted to tell the truth once without asking for anything." I studied her face. "Then keep doing that when no one is watching." She left without another word. Marcus followed her into the hallway, but I remained in the boardroom, staring at the restored committee documents in front of me. Dana exhaled beside me. "You won." "No," I said quietly. Adrian lost one boardroom. Denise's phone rang before Dana could answer. She listened, then her eyes moved to mine. "Adrian posted bond 20 minutes ago." My stomach tightened. "Where is she?" Denise's expression darkened. "We don't know." Then my phone lit up with one final message from Adrian herself. "You took my children from me. Now I'm going to take back the one thing you still think is yours." Adrian Whitaker was free again. That single fact settled over the next 48 hours like a storm cloud that refused to move. North Star restored my authority. The fraudulent ownership claim collapsed publicly. Douglas Mercer lost his law license pending investigation, and every major business publication corrected its reporting. On paper, I had won. In reality, I had learned something far more dangerous. Adrian no longer cared about winning. She cared about making sure nobody else could enjoy victory. My security team doubled protection around the house. Lila returned to school under a different schedule with plainclothes officers nearby, though she believed they were simply Mom's work friends. She laughed again by the third day, but every night before bed she asked the same question. Grandma Adrian can't come here anymore, right? Every time I answered yes, a small part of me hated that a 7-year-old even needed to ask. On Friday morning, I sat alone in my office overlooking Greenroot's Dallas Operations Center while trucks carrying fresh produce rolled out across Texas. The same system Adrian had once mocked as a little farm app was now coordinating thousands of deliveries before breakfast. Dana entered carrying 2 folders. The board approved the road's restructuring recommendation. I looked up. Already? She nodded. Your proposal protects employees, suppliers, and small investors. The Rhodes family loses controlling ownership, but the business survives. I signed the final authorization without hesitation. Revenge would have been easy. Justice required precision. Dana smiled faintly. 5 years ago, you probably imagined destroying everyone who hurt you. I looked through the glass at engineers working below. 5 years ago, I imagined surviving. My phone rang. Elliot Vance. Congratulations, he said. The vote passed unanimously. Then the employees keep their jobs? Almost all of them. I closed my eyes briefly. Good. Elliot hesitated. There's one more matter. Go ahead. The federal prosecutor wants to meet this afternoon. Dana immediately looked toward me. About Adrian? Among other things, Elliot replied. They've been reviewing financial records recovered from Mercer's office. Did they find something? Yes. His voice lowered. Evidence suggesting Adrian maintained a private contingency fund for nearly a decade. I frowned. Contingency for what? Operations against you. The line went silent. Even after everything, those words carried a different weight. Not anger. Planning. I'll be there, I said. 2 hours later, I sat inside the U.S. Attorney's office with Dana and Denise while Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Sloan spread financial charts across a conference table. Mrs. Carter, she began, our investigation shows Adrian Whitaker created 3 shell trusts beginning 8 years ago. Denise folded her arms. Purpose? Sloan slid one document toward us. Officially, estate planning. Then another. Unofficially, funding legal research, private investigators, reputation consultants, and document specialists connected almost exclusively to Simone Carter and Greenroot. Dana stared at the numbers. She spent this much? Sloan nodded. Over $2 million. I looked down at the spreadsheets. 8 years, $2 million. Countless hours, all dedicated not to building anything, but to preparing for my possible success. Why? I asked quietly. Sloan answered without emotion. We believe Mrs. Whitaker saw Greenroot as an existential threat to her control over the family. Marcus, who had joined us moments earlier, slowly sat down. She spent 8 years trying to stop something she thought might never even work. Sloan looked at him sympathetically. Control rarely follows economic logic. She opened the final folder. However, there is one transaction we cannot explain. She pointed to a wire transfer made 6 months earlier. The money had not gone to Mercer. It had not gone to Paige. It had not gone to Calvin. The recipient was listed only as Horizon Family Services. Dana searched the name immediately. Private organization, she said. Closed 2 years ago. Sloan nodded. Officially? Unofficially? Sloan turned another page. It still exists under a different registration. Marcus frowned. What did they do? Sloan looked directly at me before answering. Child custody consulting. The room became perfectly still. Consulting? I repeated. Sloane nodded. Parents involved in contested custody cases hired them to prepare psychological evaluations, parenting assessments, witness coaching, and public reputation strategies. My stomach tightened. Dana whispered. She wasn't only planning to attack Greenroot. Sloane met my eyes. No, I already knew the answer before asking. She was planning to take Lila. Nobody spoke. The silence itself became evidence. Sloane slid one final sheet across the table. It was a draft service agreement dated 6 months before the North Star acquisition. The client name had been redacted, but one handwritten note remained visible in the margin. If Carter becomes nationally influential, immediate custody review recommended. Child provides strongest leverage. Marcus pushed his chair back so abruptly it struck the wall. Enough. His voice shook with rage. She's my daughter, too. Sloane looked at him carefully. Then you should know something else. He stopped. Mrs. Whitaker never intended to raise Lila herself. Marcus frowned. What? Sloane opened a sealed envelope recovered from Mercer's files. Inside was a proposed guardianship framework naming a future trustee for Lila's inheritance rights in the event Simone Carter became legally unfit. Marcus scanned the first page, then went completely still. No, he whispered. I looked at the document. The proposed trustee was not Adrian Whitaker. It was Calvin Rhodes. Nobody in the room spoke for several seconds. Calvin Rhodes. Even after everything that had happened, the collapsed engagement, the financial fraud, the investigation, the public humiliation, Adrian had still intended to tie my daughter's future to the very man whose greed had nearly destroyed his own family. Marcus stared at the document as though it belonged to someone else's life. She wanted Calvin to control Lila's inheritance? Rebecca Sloane nodded. According to this draft, yes. Dana slowly turned another page. This wasn't written by Calvin. No, Sloane replied. It was prepared by Mercer at Adrian's instruction. I looked at the proposal again. It wasn't simply about custody. It assumed that one day I would be removed from Lila's life, declared unfit, or destroyed publicly enough that someone else could step into my place. Adrian hadn't been planning one attack, she had been building an entire future that erased me. Marcus lowered himself back into his chair. She never cared about protecting family. His voice was barely audible. She only cared about owning it. Sloane closed the folder. Federal charges are now being expanded to include conspiracy, evidence tampering, attempted fraud, and custodial interference. These newly discovered documents strengthen every count. Dana asked the question that had been forming in my mind. Where is Adrian now? Sloane's expression remained professional. We believe she intended to leave Texas this morning. Believe? Her vehicle was found abandoned near a private airport. Denise looked up sharply. Was she on a flight? No, she never boarded. The room grew quiet again. Adrian had disappeared. Not escaped. Vanished. I thanked Sloane for her work and we left the federal building without speaking much. Outside, Dallas carried on as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Traffic moved. People hurried between offices. Delivery trucks crossed intersections carrying produce routed by Green Route's algorithms. The world rarely paused for private wars. Back at Green Route headquarters, I stood alone on the operations floor long after everyone else had gone home. Giant digital maps tracked shipments across the Southwest in real time. Every blinking line represented farmers, drivers, grocery workers, families buying dinner. 8 years earlier, none of this existed. I had built it because I wanted mothers like me to have one less impossible choice. Dana found me standing there, thinking, remembering. She smiled faintly. About the sunroom? I shook my head. About the motel. She looked surprised. Why? Because I thought that was the worst night of my life. I watched another shipment icon move across West Texas. It wasn't. It was the night everything honest started. Dana nodded quietly. Pain has strange timing. Before either of us could say more, my assistant hurried onto the floor holding a tablet. Simone, you need to see this. A live news conference filled the screen. Federal prosecutors had just announced formal charges against Douglas Mercer, Paige Whitaker, and several financial consultants connected to the fraudulent ownership scheme. Adrian's name appeared repeatedly as the central organizer. Reporters shouted questions about her whereabouts. One asked whether she was considered a fugitive. The prosecutor answered carefully, "We are actively attempting to locate Mrs. Whitaker." My phone vibrated almost immediately. Elliot Vance. "You've seen the news?" "Yes." "The board has one final decision." I waited. "Effective immediately. Greenroot's acquisition review is officially closed. Every restriction has been lifted." I looked out across the operations center. "Thank you." Elliot laughed softly. "Don't thank me. Thank the woman who refused to quit when everyone else told her she was finished." After the call ended, I drove home earlier than usual. Lila was in the backyard planting tomato seedlings with my mother. She looked up the moment she saw me and ran across the grass. I picked her up without thinking. "Mommy, guess what?" "What?" "Grandpa Alvarez says these will grow all summer." I smiled. "Then we'd better take good care of them." She nodded seriously. "Things grow better when people are kind." My throat tightened. Children often understand life before adults complicate it. That evening, after Lila fell asleep, Marcus knocked on my front door. I almost didn't answer. When I did, he stood on the porch holding a small cardboard box. "I found this while cleaning my apartment." He handed it to me. Inside were old photographs, hospital bracelets from Lila's birth, grocery receipts, and one tiny pink baby sock. Beneath everything else lay a folded sheet of notebook paper in my own handwriting. I opened it carefully. It was a list I had written the week after Lila was born. At the top, I had written promises to my daughter. The first promise read, "No matter who walks away, I won't." I had forgotten the list existed. Marcus looked at me quietly. "You kept every promise." I folded the paper slowly, not perfectly. Perfect wasn't what she needed. He looked toward the upstairs bedroom where Lila slept. "She needed you." For the first time in years, there was nothing left to argue about, only truth. Marcus took a slow breath. "I'm leaving Dallas." I looked up. "What?" "I accepted a position managing a nonprofit agricultural training program in New Mexico." I blinked. "Agriculture?" He smiled sadly. "I figured I should spend the rest of my career helping people build something instead of standing beside people who destroy it." I searched his face. There was no request hidden there, no plea for another chance, just acceptance. "Will Lila still see you?" I asked. "If she wants to." I nodded. "She'll want to." He smiled for the first time that day. "Good." As he turned to leave, my phone buzzed once more. Another unknown number. My pulse quickened. But when I opened the message, it wasn't from Adrian. It was a photograph taken that afternoon from outside my house. Lila was laughing in the garden while planting tomatoes. On the back fence, barely visible unless enlarged, someone had written 2 words in fresh white paint. "Still watching." The words "still watching" stayed with me long after the police photographed the fence and the fresh paint was collected as evidence. Whoever had written them wanted one thing above all else: not to frighten me, but to remind me that fear could return whenever they chose. They wanted me looking over my shoulder instead of looking forward. They underestimated something important. I had spent too many years building a future to surrender it to ghosts from my past. By Monday morning, the message had become part of the federal investigation. Additional security surrounded the house, Lila's school, and Greenroot headquarters. Reporters continued asking whether Adrian Whitaker had fled the country, but there were no confirmed sightings. Every news broadcast ended the same way. Authorities continue searching. Life, however, refused to wait for perfect endings. Trucks still rolled before sunrise. Farmers still harvested crops. Grocery stores still needed fresh deliveries. Green Route continued doing exactly what it had always done, feeding people. That steadiness became my anchor. 3 weeks passed without another message. Leela slowly stopped asking whether someone was outside the house. She laughed more, slept better, started reminding me to water the tomato plants she and Mr. Alvarez had planted together. Marcus moved to New Mexico exactly as he promised. We spoke only about Lila. Short calls, School schedules, birthdays, nothing more. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't reconciliation. It was two parents finally acting like adults. One Friday afternoon, while preparing for Greenroot's annual Community Harvest Initiative, Dana entered my office carrying a sealed federal envelope. Rebecca Sloan sent this personally. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single-page notice. Adrian Whitaker has been located. I read the sentence twice before continuing. She had not fled overseas. She had not built another identity. She had been living quietly under an assumed name in a small town outside Santa Fe, renting a modest cottage less than 10 miles from the nonprofit agricultural training center where Marcus had just started working. I looked up slowly. Does Marcus know? Dana nodded. Federal agents contacted him this morning. My first instinct was not anger, it was confusion. Of all the places in America, why there? Before either of us could answer the question, my phone rang. Marcus. I answered immediately. Are you okay? He let out a long breath. Yes. Silence followed. Then he added, She came to see me yesterday. Every muscle in my body tightened. What? Before the agents found her. I stood. Marcus. She didn't come to threaten me. His voice sounded older than I had ever heard it. She came to ask me to leave with her. Dana looked up sharply. Leave? Marcus laughed quietly, but there was no joy in it. She said we could start over somewhere. Nobody knew us. I walked toward the office window overlooking Greenroot's headquarters. What did you tell her? Another long silence. I told her I already started over. I closed my eyes briefly. And? She cried. Those two words surprised me more than anything else in the past month. Really? Yes. Marcus paused. But it wasn't because she regretted what she did. I knew before he said it. It was because you said no. Exactly. I leaned against the glass. Some people mistake losing control for losing love. Marcus answered softly. She never learned the difference. 2 days later, federal prosecutors informed me that Adrian had agreed to a plea negotiation. Not because she accepted responsibility, but because the evidence recovered from Mercer, Page, the USB drive, the recordings, and Brielle's testimony left no realistic path to trial. Rebecca Sloan asked whether I wished to submit a victim impact statement before sentencing. I thought about it for almost an hour. Then I said yes. The sentencing hearing took place on a quiet Tuesday morning. There were no television trucks this time, no crowds. The scandal had already been replaced by newer headlines. Only the people whose lives had actually changed remained. Brielle sat in the back row alone. Marcus sat beside federal investigators. Dana and Denise sat with me. Adrian entered wearing a plain gray suit instead of silk. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older, too. Not because prison had changed her, because power had left her. When the judge invited me to speak, I stood slowly and walked to the podium. Adrian watched me without expression. I unfolded the paper in my hands, then folded it again. I didn't need it anymore. 8 years ago, I began, I believed the worst thing someone could do was take away your opportunity. I was wrong. The courtroom remained perfectly still. The worst thing someone can do is convince you that your worth depends on their approval. Adrian blinked once. I continued. You tried to take my company. When that failed, you tried to take my reputation. When that failed, you tried to take my daughter. But the one thing you never understood is that none of those things created my value. I looked directly at her. They only revealed yours. No anger entered my voice. I didn't need it anymore. My daughter will grow up knowing that family is defined by love, not control. She will know that success means lifting people, not owning them. And one day, when she asks me about you, I will tell her the truth. Adrian finally spoke, barely above a whisper. And what truth is that? I met her eyes one last time. That you had every opportunity to be loved, but you chose to be feared instead. The courtroom fell silent. Adrian looked away first. As I returned to my seat, the judge prepared to announce sentence. Just before he spoke, the courtroom doors opened quietly. Everyone turned. An elderly woman entered carrying a weathered canvas tote bag. She apologized softly for being late, then looked directly at me. I recognized her after only a second, Claire Donovan. She smiled gently and lifted something from her bag. It was another faded photograph from the county farming cooperative. "Your Honor," she said, "I believe this belongs to Miss Carter." The bailiff carried the photograph to me. I looked down and felt my breath catch. It was taken only minutes before the picture that had started this entire case. In it, I stood outside the cooperative building holding newborn Lila against my shoulder with one arm while balancing my laptop under the other. Around me stood Mr. Alvarez, the first engineers, local farmers, grocery owners, volunteers, and Marcus. We were all laughing at something outside the frame. On the back, in Claire's handwriting from 8 years earlier, were 7 simple words. The day Green Route became a family, not a company. I held the photograph in both hands for several long seconds. No one rushed me. No one interrupted. 8 years earlier, Claire Donovan had unknowingly captured the only image that truly explained Green Route's beginning. Not a billionaire standing beside executives. Not a founder ringing the stock exchange bell. Just a tired young mother holding her baby, surrounded by ordinary people who believed that fresh food should reach families instead of landfills. That had always been the real company. Everything else came later. Judge Whitman accepted the photograph into the record before turning toward Adrian. His sentence was measured, deliberate, and final. Adrian Whitaker received prison time for conspiracy, evidence tampering, fraud-related offenses, and custodial interference. Douglas Mercer and Paige Whitaker faced their own criminal proceedings. The judge also entered a permanent protective order prohibiting Adrian from contacting me or Lila directly or indirectly after her release. When the hearing ended, I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt unexpectedly light. Justice had not erased the past. It had simply removed the weight of carrying it alone. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited one final time. They asked whether I hated Adrian, whether I regretted refusing the settlement years earlier, whether I planned to sue for additional damages. I answered only one question. "What happens next?" a young reporter asked. I smiled. "Tomorrow morning, trucks still leave our warehouses before sunrise. Farmers still harvest. Families still eat dinner. Life keeps moving. So will we." That evening, I drove home without turning on the radio for the first time in weeks. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt earned. Lila met me at the front door wearing muddy sneakers and holding a small watering can. "Mommy," she said excitedly, "come see." She pulled me into the backyard. The tomato plants she and Mr. Alvarez had planted were standing taller now, their first small green fruit beginning to appear beneath the leaves. She pointed proudly. "They worked." I knelt beside her. "Yes, they did." She looked at me with complete seriousness. "Because we didn't stop taking care of them." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "That's exactly why." A week later, Green Route hosted its annual Community Harvest Initiative. Hundreds of farmers, drivers, grocery workers, volunteers, students, and local families gathered at the original cooperative where everything had started. Mr. Alvarez insisted I give the opening speech. I stood on the same wooden platform where I had once demonstrated a rough prototype to 3 skeptical growers. This time there were hundreds of people in front of me. Giant delivery trucks lined the road behind them, each one carrying the Green Route logo. Lila stood beside my mother in the front row. Marcus had driven in from New Mexico for the event and stood quietly near the back, smiling when Lila waved at him. Brielle attended too, volunteering at the registration table without asking for recognition. She never approached the stage. She simply worked. I looked across the crowd before speaking. People often ask me how Green Route became successful. A light breeze moved across the fields. They expect me to talk about software, investment, technology, or strategy. I smiled. They're all wrong. A few people laughed softly. Green Route succeeded because every time someone tried to build it on fear, someone else chose trust instead. A farmer tested unfinished software. An engineer stayed when payroll was uncertain. Drivers believed impossible schedules could work. Grocery managers gave a young founder one chance instead of none. I looked toward Lila. And every night, one little girl reminded me why quitting was never an option. Applause rolled gently through the crowd. I waited until it settled. Success isn't proving your enemies wrong. I paused. Success is building a life that no longer needs their permission. The applause lasted much longer that time. After the ceremony, children ran through the fields while volunteers packed fresh produce for local food banks. Mr. Alvarez walked beside me, carrying a basket of tomatoes. You know, he said with a grin, those first routing predictions weren't very good. I laughed. They were terrible. Your presentations were worse. I know. He handed me one of the tomatoes. But you kept coming back. I looked across the farm. So did you. He shrugged. That's what family does. As the afternoon faded into evening, Lila tugged gently on my hand. Mommy? Yes? Can we take one picture? Claire Donovan, now smiling with the same old camera hanging around her neck, stepped forward before I could answer. I'd be honored. We gathered naturally. My mother, Lila, Mr. Alvarez, the engineers, farmers, grocery partners, Dana, Denise. Even Marcus stood a respectful distance away until Lila waved him closer. No one arranged us. No one worried about appearances. Claire lifted the camera. Ready? We smiled. The shutter clicked. She lowered the camera, laughing softly. This one won't need defending 8 years from now. Everyone laughed with her. As the sun disappeared behind the fields, Lila slipped her small hand into mine. Mommy? Are we home now? I looked across the people who had stood beside me not because they had to, but because they chose to. I looked at the farm where green route had truly begun, at the tomatoes growing from the soil, at the road where trucks would leave again before dawn, carrying food instead of fear. Then I looked down at my daughter. Yes, sweetheart, I said. We've been home for a long time. We just had to finish finding it.